93% of communication is conveyed through body language. So body language is extremely powerful in every form of communication we have, especially interviews. Hey, I'm Abby and welcome back to the Life Work Balance YouTube channel. Today I'm going to share with you the power of body language and the sorts of things that you should do during an interview and the sorts of things you should not do during an interview to really convey that you are the best person for the role that you've been applying to. Before we jump into that, please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you're looking forward to learning a little bit about the power of body language. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can receive life work balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. So regardless of the type of interview you're in, your body language matters, even in phone interviews. When you're talking to someone, you can usually tell if they're paying attention, if they're distracted, and if they're smiling and confident. And so your body language, whether it's in person, virtual, or on the phone, matters to your success of an interview. Body language gives everyone valuable information. As the candidate, you convey your focus, you convey your confidence, you convey your self-assurance in this position. From the candidate perspective, visually watching the interviewers, you can tell if things are going well, if you're clicking with them, if they're confused, if they're bored, if they think that you are not the right fit. So body language is important to everyone who is involved in the interview process. So I want to talk about your body language before an interview, during an interview, and what to do at the end of an interview. So let's start off with the before portion of the interview. Before you actually go to your interview, maybe you do this in the car, maybe you do this in the bathroom when you get to your interview, maybe you do this before you even leave your home for the interview. You can do what's called a power pose. A power pose, just standing for a minute to 2 minutes, in a powerful pose can really boost your confidence. If you're interested in learning more about these power poses, I'm not going to demonstrate now, but if you would like to learn a little bit more about it, I've linked to a TED Talk in the description box below, and I've also put it in the cards up above, so you can go ahead and watch that next. What's great about these power poses is that research has shown that engaging in this power pose for just 1 to 2 minutes before you engage in something that might be nerve-wracking or intimidating can really help boost your overall confidence. So this is something that you can do. You can put it in your toolkit for future interviews. The second thing that I want to touch on that is the before interview process that's associated with body language is the concept of you are what you wear. Human beings are very visual creatures. We make judgments about what we see before we can really have our realistic and more concrete brain kick in. So you want to make a great first impression by the way you look, by the way that you appear to the interviewers. So what does this mean? Well, it means a couple of things. First, literally what you're wearing. You want to make sure that in the interviewer's eyes, you look like you fit into this role. You want to dress professionally. You want to dress in a well-groomed, clean manner. You want to make sure your hair is combed and your fingernails are well cared for. You want to wear clean shoes that don't have a lot of scuff marks on it. And you want to wear clothes that fit you well and that tend to go along or align with the overall dress code for this organization. Now, my recommendation is that you dress one level above the dress code for this organization. So, for example, if you're going to be applying to a job where people are wearing jeans and a t-shirt most of the time, maybe you can wear a nice pair of jeans and a polo shirt or a button-up shirt or a more casual pair of slacks with a nice shirt. You do not want to underdress. I was once an interviewer in an interview where our culture, when it comes to the dress code for our organization, was business casual. So people were able to wear slacks, they were able to wear nice shirts and blouses, and we did an interview with someone who came in wearing a tank top and sweatpants. That did not make a great first impression, and that was one of the things that really concerned us about their fit for the position. So make sure you dress the part. You want to dress to impress. The other thing that you may not have considered is the number of bags you would bring with you. I highly recommend you bring one or no bags. When people carry more than one bag, they tend to be viewed as disorganized or messy. So if you're going to bring a bag, like a briefcase, a laptop bag, a purse, bring one bag and keep it organized. You don't want to make it seem like you have no idea where your papers are or that you're flustered when you're digging and rifling through your bags. So, you are what you wear. Come well dressed, come well groomed. Sloppy can leave a bad first impression before the interview even begins. And make sure you have one or no bags for your interview. You also want to start your body language focus before the interview begins, probably in the parking lot when you arrive to the building where your interview will take place. You never know who you're going to run into or who's watching. You might walk into the building with someone who's on the interview panel. You might be interacting with the secretary or the person at the front desk who is going to give valuable feedback about how you showed up and how you interacted with them to the interview panel. So make sure that you turn that body language awareness up as soon as you arrive to the location where your interview will be held. You also want to make sure that if you are waiting for your interview for any amount of time, that you don't automatically turn to your phone and slouch down looking at your phone without paying much attention to the surrounding environment. Slouching over your phone, just mindlessly scrolling, can make it seem like you're bored or disinterested. So try not to default to your phone if you're waiting for your interview to begin. Maybe instead, sit up straight. Observe the area where you're sitting. See what sorts of magazines are in the waiting area. What sorts of documents do they have posted on the walls? That will give you an idea of what the culture might be for this organization. So don't just default to looking at your phone, and start being aware of your body language the instant you arrive to the location of this interview. You never know who's watching, and you don't know who you're going to be interacting with. So those are the things to consider when it comes to the pre-interview. Now let's talk about the importance of your body language actually during the interview. So the interview begins with the greeting. When you greet the interviewers, they're going to get a visual first impression of you. This is your look. How are you showing up? Are you clean? Are you well groomed? Do you look like you can fit this part? If not, that is one major concern that will be raised in the evaluation process. When you greet your interviewer, make sure you maintain comfortable eye contact. You have a warm, friendly smile. When you shake their hands, make it a short but firm handshake. You will want to stand for the greeting rather than sit and have them come to you. And you'll want to be aware of your posture. Are you standing tall and straight, or are you slouched or slumped over? Slouching and slumping can really convey that you don't have confidence, or that you're unsure of yourself or insecure. Having good posture, sitting up straight, standing up tall, can convey the opposite, that you are confident, that you're self-assured, that you know what you're doing, and you feel comfortable in your own body. So that's the greeting. Now, what sort of things should you engage in actually during the interview? So there's no specific phase that you should engage in all of these different things in. These are all kind of combined during the interview process. So the first most important part is eye contact. You want to make comfortable eye contact with each of your interviewers. You might be sitting in a one-on-one interview and you don't want to have too much eye contact where you feel like your eyes are going to dry out because you're not blinking, or you feel like you are not looking at anything else, you're only staring at the person in front of you. Too much eye contact can be a concern. Too little eye contact can also be a concern. So you may have a padfolio with you or a notepad. It's okay to break eye contact to jot some notes down or some thoughts that you might have during the interview process. Yet, you do want to continue to maintain comfortable eye contact through the entire interview. You also want to be aware of your posture. So like I mentioned with the greeting, you want to sit or stand tall with your posture. You don't want to be slouched or slumped. Again, being slouched or slumping can really convey that you are not confident or you are not self-assured of your own skills for this position. So you want to be tall. You want to be open. You don't want to be closed off. When the interviewer is talking, it's okay to lean forward towards them because leaning forward can indicate that you're interested in what they're saying. When you're thinking, it's okay to more lean back and maybe break away eye contact to think about your responses to things. But one of the things you don't really want to engage in is this like rocking backwards and forwards and making it a little bit obvious that you're moving backwards and forwards. So it's very subtle movements forward to let the interviewer know that you are listening and that you're interested in what they're saying and you're engaged in the conversation. And then at times pulling it backwards, leaning more away from the interviewer to think about your own responses to questions or to even just take a break from leaning forward. I also mentioned you want to have an open position. So when you're open, you're not blocking yourself from the interviewer. Blocking would look like crossing your arms or creating a barrier between you and the interviewer. It could also be having your hands on the table in front of you. So you want to have an open posture. You want your hands to be in your lap, or you want your hands to just be resting comfortably on the table, but not creating a barrier between you and the interviewer. While your interview conversation is happening, you want to make sure that you're also engaging in active listening. So you're listening to really understand what the interviewer is asking you and what the interviewer is saying. So what does this mean? This means silencing your mind as well as your voice while the interviewer is talking. So not just letting that inner dialogue or that inner voice come up with responses to whatever the interviewer might be saying before they're done. While you're doing that, you are not fully engaged in the conversation of what the interviewer is saying, and you might miss something. So turn off that inner voice and really listen to understand what the interviewer is saying or asking. You'll also want to engage in nodding, small gestures to let the interviewer know that you are listening and you understand and you're tuned in to what they're saying. You might engage in small verbal cues like uh-huh or yes to let the interviewer know that you are tuned in to what they're saying and you're following them. This active listening really shows that you are being responsive to what they are saying to you. It also gives you the opportunity to fully hear the questions they're asking you, or if you've asked them a question, to fully hear their response. Active listening is an essential part of any communication. It's also important in the interview process. Next, let's talk about what to do with your hands, if you're maybe fidgeting, or if you engage in gestures during your interview process. You want to try to cultivate stillness within your body. Fidgeting is one of the things that can be very obvious and can really turn off interviewers. So you want to reduce the amount of fidgeting that you do as low as possible. Turn it off completely if you can. You do not want to engage in self-touch. So for example, you do not want to be picking at your fingers or your fingernails. You don't want to be touching your lips or picking at your lips while the interview is occurring. If you have a keyboard in front of you, like if it's a virtual interview, or if you have just happen to have a keyboard in front of you for the type of interview you're in, you don't want to mess with the keyboard or mess with wires or anything that's on your desk or the table area. If you have your car keys in your pocket or attached to your pants somehow, you don't want to mess with those and jingle them back and forth. If you're wearing earrings, if you're wearing a tie, if you're wearing a watch or rings on your hands, you don't want to mess with any jewelry or accessories that you might have. So messing with your earrings while you're talking to someone, touching your necklace, messing with your watch or rotating your rings is really distracting while you're talking to someone. And finally, you don't want to bounce your feet. Bouncing your feet even a little bit can really come across. It can move the floor around you, it can move you slightly, and it can be very, very distracting. So again, cultivate a sense of stillness in your body. Try to be as still as possible. And this is where I like to share this pressure point technique that I've used in the past. So if you find yourself feeling anxious or worried or nervous, you actually have a pressure point in both hands, so whatever hand works best for you, in this kind of muscly or fatty area of your hand. So between your thumb and your pointer finger. So I highly recommend that if you're feeling anxious or nervous or just concerned about something, you can actually press right here on that pressure point to help relieve some of that anxiety. Now, one of the great things about this pressure point is you can do this with your hands in your lap under the table so the interviewers never see it happening. It can also be a way to really focus you and center you and really remove that feeling of anxiety, that nervousness, or that concern that could otherwise manifest in hand movements, gestures, or fidgeting. Next, let's talk about facial expressions. So when it comes to facial expressions, along with having that comfortable eye contact, you want to have a comfortable, warm smile throughout the interview process. Smiling conveys that you're friendly, that you're warm, and that you're open. And while that might not be in the job description, it is something that is important to your overall success in a job. So you want to smile, but you don't want to smile too much. You don't want to be smiling the entire time. Having short, warm smiles throughout your interview can really help convey that sense of positivity, warmness, and comfort that they're looking for in their future employee. You do not want to have RBF, that resting face that really conveys that you're not interested, that you might be angry or bored. So if you tend to have facial expressions that your resting face is not very friendly, I happen to have a not very friendly resting face, then you will want to focus on having that warm, friendly smile throughout the interview. You might want to record yourself practicing an interview and look at your facial expressions. During a mock interview that is recorded, that's a great way to really get in some data about how you visually show up during the interview process. So keep track of your facial expressions. And you will want to use this data to really enhance any interview that you have coming up. So you're not going to parrot them and completely copycat them, but you are going to engage in some behaviors, body language, and facial expressions that are similar to what they are engaging in. And again, with those facial expressions, leaning into the interviewer really conveys that you are paying attention and you are interested in what they are saying. Finally, when it comes to closing the interview during the actual interview process, you want to continue to maintain that warm smile. You will want to have a firm but short handshake to each of the interviewers who are present, and you'll want to thank them for their time and for this opportunity. Maintain your composure until you get to your car. While you might feel like the instant you can leave the interview room, you can let it all go and you can jiggle out all your anxiety, maintain your composure until you get to your car, because again, you never know who is watching, and you want to make sure that you can continue to maintain that composure to make that good impression. So those tips were primarily for an in-person interview. Yet in this day and age, we have in-person interviews, we have video or virtual interviews, and we have phone interviews. So what sorts of things should you engage in those other types of interviews? Well, with a video or virtual interview, a lot of the same things matter. Like eye contact, for example, is still really important. Yet eye contact is tricky when you're virtual because you're not in front of actual people. You're in front of your camera and you're in front of a laptop or a computer. So that webcam is where you want to make eye contact. My trick for remembering to make eye contact with the camera is to put a sticky note that says, "Look here," with an arrow pointing to the little hole where the camera is. That is a visual reminder to continue to look at the camera rather than look at the screen or look at yourself on the screen. You also want to ensure that you are smiling and that you are nodding, so you're engaging in those facial expressions and those small gestures that are assuring the other people that you're tuned into what's being said during the interview. You want to make sure that you minimize distractions during a video or virtual interview. So if you know that maybe there are going to be children in the home or pets that are barking, that you have someone to help you kind of keep track of those people or things to reduce the distractions that might be going on. If you know that maybe you're in a busy area, try to find a space that is quiet and not busy. And finally, the equipment that you use can really help enhance the overall interview experience, both for you and for the interviewers. For example, if you are using headphones, that can be really helpful for increasing the volume so that you can hear what the interviewers are saying without leaning into the computer too close. When you're leaning into the computer too close, the other people on the other side of that camera might think that you can't hear them or that you aren't understanding what they're saying. So when you can maintain a still body posture and you can still engage in the conversation effectively, that is great. So sometimes you may need to have headphones, or you might need to use speakers that are external to the laptop that you're using, or an external microphone so that they can hear you really well. Lighting also really helps when it comes to a virtual interview. Lighting can really change the way that people perceive you. If your lighting is terrible and they can't see you, that will affect how they feel about the overall interview. So if you want to learn a little bit more about how to ace a virtual or video interview, I have several videos on this topic. So I've linked to those in the description box below, and I've put a couple in the cards up above. And like I mentioned during the very beginning of this video, if you're doing a phone interview, your body language and posture and smiling still matters, even if they can't see you. So you can tell if someone is talking to you and they're smiling. You can tell if someone is talking to you and they're distracted. You can tell if someone is talking to you and if they're more slouched over and not really engaged in the conversation. So again, even if you're on a phone interview where you're not actually visually seeing someone, you want to make sure that you are still engaging in that confident posture, that you are smiling, and that you're nodding and actively listening during that phone interview. But really what it comes down to is practice, practice, practice. Practice interviewing. Make sure you are recording yourself, or you're doing an interview with someone else who can give you good, concrete feedback on ways that you can improve your overall body language and how you're conveying yourself during the interview. It can be intimidating, it can be scary, and it can even feel embarrassing. Yet, if you practice, that will really help enhance the overall actual interview that you participate in. So hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or ideas on the power of body language or what you should and should not do during an interview, please go ahead and put them in the comments box below. I love receiving comments. I look at them all and I respond to them all individually. So please leave me a comment if you've got any questions, comments, thoughts, or ideas, and I will get back to you as quickly as I am able. And as always, if you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can receive life-work balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. Thanks, and I'll see you next week.